Ready? To my left, are you ready? Everybody online, are you ready?
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are so glad to see you here at the SACOG meeting of October the 20th in the year of 2022. What a great day it is. Beautiful day. We are looking forward to this meeting, and I want to get it started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to have council member from the city of Galt, Mr. Rich Lozano, lead us in the pledge.
Member Hart, pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to let you know that even when the Raiders lose and my favorite team, the Kings, lose, the sun still shines.
Right on.
Right on, that's right.
Yeah, I thought about you.
Hey, look, there is always a tomorrow, so we're gonna wait for tomorrow, right? And then when tomorrow runs out, there's always next season.
There you go.
Anyway, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll to establish quorum?
Yes, thank you. And just before I do that, as a reminder to our board members that are here in person with us, thank you for being here. When you'd like to speak, you can push the button on your microphone. When it lights green, that means you are live and it will go through the system. And then when you're concluded speaking, please press the button again. And to our members who are joining us online, we're very excited to have you here as well, participating in the meeting. And we ask that you use the raise hand feature when you need to comment or speak. I'll go ahead and take roll now. Director Baines. Absent Howdeshelt for Bernasconi.
Present.
Bradford.
Present.
Branscombe.
Happy to be here.
Bullahan.
Here.
Burris.
Here.
Clark Kretz.
Here.
Desmond.
Here.
Frericks.
Here.
Frost. Absent Gallardo. Absent Gog.
Yes, good morning.
Gore. Absent Guerrero.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Joyner. Absent Kozlowski.
Here.
Lozano.
Here.
Middleton. Absent New.
Here.
Sander.
Here.
Zaragoza.
Here.
Saylor.
Here.
Chenier. Absent Spokley.
Here.
Director- Thank you. Stallard.
Here.
Soon.
Here.
Thomas. Here. West.
Here.
Vice Chair Kennedy.
Here.
Chair Jennings.
I am here.
And ex officio member Tacker for Benny Paul.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll note for the record that Director Baines is present.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on now to public communication. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address the board on items that do not appear on this agenda. Lynette, did we receive any public comment, or is there a member of the public that wishes to address the board at this time?
We received no public communications and I see no public members with their hands raised.
Okay, all right. We will now turn to our consent calendar. These items are intended to be approved in one motion. However, anyone can remove an item for a separate conversation, separate discussion. Does any director at this time wish to remove an item? Lynette, is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item for public comment?
I see no hand raised and no public comment.
Okay,
Through the chair, I wish to move to approve the consent calendar. Mr. President Baines.
can
Martha
you be my
Guerrero,
second? Director Baines, can you be my second?
Yes.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right, my first is right to my right. So we will you please take roll?
Yes, thank you. Director Baines.
Aye.
Howdeshelt for Bernasconi,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond,
Aye.
Frericks,
Aye.
Frost, absent Gallardo, absent Gog,
Yes.
Gore, absent Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner, absent Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton, absent New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier, absent Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you very much. Okay, we'll now hear action item number 14 on your agenda. It's to approve the amendment to the CalPERS contract. And we have SACOG's own Eric Johnson from the SACOG staff that will present the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In August, I was in front of you with a similar item with the intent to amend our contract under CalPERS rules. There's a two-step process for this. And at the time I had mentioned that CalPERS had reached out to SACOG saying that our contract that was with them was not compliant with current state law, and we need to make a minor amendment. This amendment simply states that people who are temporary employees, after they reach a certain number of hours, then need to be contributing members to CalPERS. There shouldn't be any financial impact. We don't have many employees that fall into this category. And so the action before you today is required by CalPERS to be on your action calendar. That concludes the presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Great. Is there any director at this time that has a question or comment on this matter? Lynette, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
I have no public comment and there's no raised hands from our participants.
So with that, I would look for a motion to approve. If you'll state your name.
Mr. Chair,
Motion.
Director Saragosa moves to approve the amendment.
New seconds?
New seconds. Lynette, would you please take the roll?
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Howdeshelt for Bernasconi,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Aye.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond,
Aye.
Frericks, Frost, absent Gallardo, absent Gog,
Yes.
Gore, absent Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner, absent Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton, absent New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier, absent Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is item number 15, award contracts for legal services. And our SACOG staff member, Eric Johnson, will present this as well. He did such a great job. He had 5 minutes to present the last item. He only took 2. Just incredible job. I want to just applaud you on the great job you did. You can do it again if you want.
Thank you.
I'll let you present the item at this time.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I feel good and ready now. So this item before you today is approval of legal services. And so just to recap kind of what has happened over the last several months, back in July, SACOG released an RFP for legal services. At your June meeting, one of the items on that agenda was to do a 5 subject release for legal services. And so we had that out. because this is such an important item to the board, typically we bring items as approval of the RFP, and at that time, then things are delegated to the executive director. We're back before you with our recommendation that we have, and then the recommendation is to have 3 contracts approved and then delegate to the executive director to negotiate and execute the final contracts. So again, as I mentioned, we had 5 categories for legal services that we advertised, and we had a really great response to those. We interviewed the top 2 firms in every category, with the exception of general counsel, where we interviewed all 3 firms that applied. And we involved 5 members of the board in the interview process throughout the 2 stages of the 4 other categories in general counsel. Here's just a brief overview of all of the firms that applied. I won't go into all of them, but there were 9 firms in total who applied. And as I mentioned, we interviewed the top 2, and so those are shown in bold here. And then the firms that are recommended for award are those that are shown in blue. There's 3 firms in total: Best and Krieger for general counsel, labor and employment and litigation, Sloan Sakai, Young and Wong for contracts, and the Thomas Law Group for environmental. So I wanted to briefly give you an overview of the rates and the firms, key personnel who are recommended here in this. We have Best and Krieger. We'll have Mike Maurer, who you know from his time as the interim general counsel, as the lead attorney for general counsel, as well as 2 of his colleagues. There's a locally based HR labor and employment attorney, Stacy Sheston, who would be our lead for labor and employment, and Scott Ditforth, who is part of the litigation practice at Best and Krieger, would be available for us should we need to utilize the litigation services. So each of the firms proposed an hourly rate that's typical for legal services, is kind of as needed, and 2 of the firms have rate increases, and so those are shown here for outer years on the contract. So the staff item lists this information, but just to recap, we're hoping to have a November 1 effective date for these 3 contracts, with a 3-year initial term and an optional 1-year 2-term. We have a SACOG standard federal agreement that includes a bunch of state and federal required clauses. And so that is what we would have executed for each of the 3 firms that are recommended. And then we would build projects on an hourly basis. There's not a recommended threshold on any of the 3 contracts. However, we do work with the Policy and Innovation Committee as the lead committee on legal services to review and approve the budget, and we can report back to them on the annual spend year to year across the 3 contracts. But in total, we have $350,000 budgeted for this year, and we don't anticipate the need to exceed that for the year. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And Chair Jennings,
Yes, please.
if I might jump in, I meant to do this at the beginning of this item, but I have had recent dealings with one of these firms, so I'm going to recuse myself at this point from the vote.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in that category? So in order for me to be totally transparent, I have had dealings with this organization as well. So in an abundance of caution, I will recuse myself from this vote as well. Okay. Is
Mr.
there
Chair,
director-
Mr. Chair, this is Sean Harris. I have dealt with BB&K and also another firm that was on the list as well. So probably a good idea I do so as well.
Thank you, Director Harris.
Mr. Chair, this is Saylor. I have a couple of questions, if I could.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me take Darren Soon first, and then I'll come right back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, can we get an opinion, and I realize this may be awkward, but whether or not we can weigh in? I honestly don't remember if I've dealt with BB&K. I mean, I remember dealing with Tina Law Group probably a couple of years ago as part of another board, but I was trying to understand what the circumstances may require us to do so.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll say it is, I'm here talking as an applicant today, not as a general counsel on this particular one, which is why I'm in the room here. But having had dealings with our firm in general wouldn't necessarily be a conflict. But there would be potential Levine Act conflicts if you've received $250 or more contribution, or there would be if there's any sort of, if one of the firms is a source of income to you in some way, has hired any of you in some way. But if it's simply that you've done work with them, that wouldn't generally be considered a conflict.
Thank you.
You said that would not be conflict.
Correct. Would not be a conflict.
Can I ask a quick question? I understood what you said, but one of the potential attorneys, actually two on the list, are actually city attorneys for the city of Galt, in which I've dealt with. I just want to make that public, but I will not be recusing myself from this.
To the chair,
Okay, let me get to, is this on this matter?
on this matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a recovering lawyer, so forgive me on this. I think there would only be a conflict if the attorney had a conflict. And I'm not hearing that in this case because it's on matters. If the matters are not the same, there's no conflict. And so if the matters are not exactly the same, that you don't have a conflict of interest, and I think everybody would be able to vote unless you had that financial conflict that Mr. Maurer just described.
That's correct. There wouldn't be any, when I mention conflicts, I'm referring to, your political reform act conflict of interest type of conflicts. As far as attorney ethical conflicts, my responsibility as a member of the bar, there isn't any, that conflict isn't relevant in this particular discussion.
Okay, let me get to Director Saylor.
Questions on different topics, so there's one, this one, I wait till that's
Sorry.
happened.
Don, you're gonna have to say that again because you're breaking up.
I'm so sorry. I have questions on a different topic, so I'm going to others will speak further on the conflict questions I'll wait.
Director Saylor, we're having a bit of a hard time hearing you, at least in the boardroom. It sounds like you're underwater.
His question is.
Yeah, I
We
think
can see your mouth moving, saying, can you hear me now?
he said he'd wait until
all right.
we're done with the questions regarding
Okay.
conflicts.
All right.
Yeah.
So I see Director Frost and Director Kennedy with hands up.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I have received contributions from Thomas Law Group, and I can't remember how long ago the exact amount. So out of the abundance of caution, I think I better recuse myself.
Thank you. Director Kennedy.
No, sir, I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else on this subject of recusal? Okay. Director Saylor, want to try again? I think he's trying to use his phone in addition to this.
Director Saylor, you might want to try turning off your video. Maybe that'll make the connection a little better. You want to try that? There you go.
Director Saylor, I can actually call you into the meeting from your cell phone, and you can leave the meeting from Zoom and rejoin, but that way you can ask your question if that's okay. You want to give me a thumbs up if that works?
Okay.
Chair Jennings, we do have Director New's hand raised.
Let's take Director New for now. Director New?
And I just want to let you know that it's also hard to hear some of the directors speak. So, I had a little trouble hearing Eric when he was speaking, but also some of the directors, maybe they're speaking into the mics, maybe not. But some I can hear, some it's a little hard to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
Ditto.
We can move our microphones closer to us. We can put a little more oomph into our voice and make sure that you can hear.
Chair Jennings, I think this is a great time to suggest that we're going to really try to get you all in person for board meetings next year. Just seemed timely to make that suggestion. But no offense to those of you on Zoom. I know it's convenient, but stand by for the all in-person board meetings in 2023.
Okay.
Our CEO has spoken. Okay. So anyone else with their hand up other than Director Saylor? And who's working with him to try to get?
I'm currently calling him right now.
Okay. Director Bulahan.
I'd just like to make a comment. I normally would be there in person since I normally work across the river, but I'm here in Ileton awaiting the grand opening of our long-awaited museum. It starts at 11, so they're like kind of worried about me like being out there at 11. But anyway, that's another story.
Please send pictures. We all want to see, and then we'll be able to go visit.
Okay. And I'm taking advantage of their Wi-Fi in here, so that's.
Director Saylor, it looks like you're live now. Do you want to try to make your comment?
I'm so sorry for this.
Go ahead and say a few more words. I think I got it.
My questions are largely answered by Mr. Johnson's presentation. I'm not accustomed to voting in favor of contracts that are not presented to us. So in this instance, we're voting on an intention to enter into a contract, but the language of the contract is not in the packet. So that's an unusual circumstance for most of our governing bodies. I appreciate the material that Eric was presented today of the firms who were involved in procurement, as well as the hourly rates that were being asked to approve. And I appreciate that the policy and operations committee will continue to work on this matter, and that there's an overall.
Director Saylor, we apologize. We still sounds like you're underwater. I'm so sorry. That's probably difficult. Do you want to try to email Lynette or myself? This is Renee Handy talking, and we can read your comment for you.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Director Saylor, we're sorry we can't really get your audio, but I think from our exchanges yesterday, if I'm going to be accurate here, I think Director Saylor had raised a concern about not having the actual contract in the packet before you, and maybe I'll let Eric address that too. I know Eric talked to Director Saylor yesterday. That is not a standard practice for us because we have a pretty standard federal contract. It looks the same all the time. What we do with you is get your authorization, right, to release an RFP. In this case, we're getting a second authorization because we know legal services are really important and 5 board members were involved in the selection. And so in this case, we're doing our standard procedure and just getting you to authorize us to and delegate to me to sign that contract. If you want to see the contract after the fact, happy to do that, but they're very standard. I think that was one of the issues. I know Director Saylor also wanted to see some of the rates, the billing rates, which Mr. Johnson showed you all. And again, I guess just to summarize from my perspective, I know this is a really important decision. That's why we brought it to you twice and we bring it back to you today. It's also why we actually had 2 rounds of interviews and 2 board members in the first round and 3 different board members in the second round. So this is always tough to pick the right legal team. We feel very good about this recommendation, feel very good about Mr. Maurer's work with us as the interim general counsel over the last few months. and why we make that recommendation. So I hope I'm doing justice to your concerns, Director Saylor. Apologize again for the audio.
Director Sell, any comments? I'm gonna see if your audio is getting better.
I believe Director Saylor's typing out an email to send to Lynette or me.
I'm typing an email, thinking that Lynette's presentation was good. I would like to have that be part of the public record on this contract. That's my request at this point, and I'll put that in the email.
I think somebody else maybe understood that.
I'm getting the impression, as James said from Director Saylor, that he's uncomfortable approving this item without a contract in front of him.
Okay.
Is the essence. As James said, we have a standard federal contract that we do. Typically, when we come to the board with actions on contracts, we provide the scope of work or a description of the services. You know, in this case, given the broad nature of the legal services, the scopes that will be included in the contracts will be very broad to encompass everything that may arise in the specified 5 categories that we laid out in the staff report. But if the board were to act today, as I mentioned, we would have the firm of Sloan Sakai prepare the contract for BBK, and then BBK would assist us in preparing the contract for Sloan Sakai. And we're happy to provide those to the board either as a receive and file at the November meeting or offline if you want to review the substance of those.
Okay.
Chair Jennings, Vice Chair Kennedy has his hand raised.
Director Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I guess, James, I'll stall while Don's frantically typing. You said that typically we have the job description and it's a pretty boilerplate federal contract. And I understand that, and that makes sense. But I guess beyond typically, is it our past practice to do that? I mean, this isn't out of the ordinary in any way, is it? Or if it is, please let me know.
It is not. It is not. You'll note if you go back to your packets, we don't typically provide the entire contract in. You have a very standard set of operating procedures for approval. And if you even go back to the last legal services contract in 2018, the extension, I believe you'll see the same thing.
Yeah, in 2018, the board actually awarded a new contract to Sloan Sakai. And at that time, Kirk Trost was our in-house general counsel. And his advice at that time was for us to not include the full contracts, which are about 75 pages of forms and background of requirements. And as I said, we kind of include the scope of work and then delegate to the executive director to execute said contracts.
Okay, so, for anybody who's read as many federal contracts as I have, I want to say thank you. But beyond that, I'll just say that not knowing exactly what Director Saylor's concerns are, but if they're these that we've been talking about, I did have the privilege of sitting in the final interview for general counsel with a couple of my colleagues here. And I will tell you, I'm familiar with both firms. I went into it, eyes wide open and transparent, and told the panel that I believed either one could do the job and was capable of doing a good job. I've actually had more experience dealing with the other firm that was in the interview. And it was clear to me, and I won't speak for my colleagues, but it was clear to me that the BBK, not only the interview, but the submittals were just superior to the competition at the time, which is why I, during the interview panel, voted to support BBK, and I to this day think that it is the right move for SACOG. Thank you.
Chair Jennings.
Kennedy, Director Soon.
Well, Chair, thank you, Chair. When appropriate, based on what I just heard from from Vice Chair Kennedy, I'm prepared to move the item when appropriate. Thank you.
When appropriate.
Second.
Chair Jennings, I do have an email from Director Saylor I could read into the record if you'd like.
Please do.
Thank you.
And Don, thanks for typing that up as quickly, and Director Kennedy for giving him the time to be able to get that done.
His email says, yes, I would like to see the contract once it is executed. Eric answered my questions and I want to have the information in the slides be part of the public record. The documents in the agenda were incomplete. I can support the action with this. And then he just sent a second comment that reads, there was no information on the bidders or rates of the selected firms in the staff packet. That as a minimum should be standard practice. I do not have any problem with the selected firms.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Okay.
Eric, just a question on the cost. So the 350,000, what is that relative to where we were, say, the last fiscal year? I'm just wondering what the increase was. I don't have a problem with the firms, but just looking at what our cost is compared to, last budget cycle.
Sure. So for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, we had a budget of approximately $450,000 for legal services. Our spend was $388,000. So this is slightly below that. It was worth noting that Mr. Trist, when he was here, was also working on non-legal projects like the Connect Card and Bike Share. So some of that is included in the $450,000 budget, but it's on par or slightly below what we've paid historically.
Thank you. And you feel comfortable, because when I first looked at the number for 3 firms, I thought, wow, that might be kind of low. So, but you feel comfortable with that 350, that we won't be coming back late. I mean, I know there's always things that arise that could throw that number out of sync, but you feel comfortable with that number going forward, just assuming all things run normally.
The rates as a whole are approximately 8% above where we were before. Again, with those projects ending, the Connect Card and on your consent calendar was moving the streetcar over to RT. I think our costs are going to be within the budget amount, 350. It's worth noting also with delaying the blueprint, most of the work with the Thomas Law Group won't occur in the current fiscal year. And so we'll be accounting for that in the future fiscal years when they're actually working on the EIR.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So it sounds like Director Soon has a motion.
Second.
Seconded. So will you please take the roll?
I'd like to make a comment, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. I think in a matter like this, the selection of, even though general counsel, outside counsel, I've had, in my experience, it's always been the approval is an extension of the trust and confidence in senior management in making this selection. And on that basis and on the understanding of the quality of their firm, I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just one quick, thanks, Director Branscombe. I have similar comments. I mean, I think, we had, source a first round at the, sort of first bite at the apple with staff, senior level staff, going over these sort of firms in terms of interviews and such. Second level or interviews, with the chair and the vice chair of the Policy and Innovation Committee. The committee also recommends this, for approval, which I sit on, but a number of us are here on that committee as well. And then, we also, of course, I think to Director Kennedy's points, also Director Kennedy, Bradford, and Clark Kretz also participated in the third round, sort of final round of vetting and interviews. So, I mean, I feel like with all of those safeguards in place, I feel very supportive of the staff recommendation. So, yeah, I know there's a motion on the floor. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. Thank you.
Motion by Director Soon, second by Director Branson. Will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Baines?
Aye.
Howdeshelt for Bernasconi?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Aye.
Burris?
Aye.
Clark Kretz?
Yes.
Desmond?
Aye.
Frericks?
Aye.
Frost?
Recuse.
Gallardo? Absent Gog?
Yes.
Gore, absent Guerrero?
Aye.
Director Harris, are you still recused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Joyner absent. Kozowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton absent. New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier absent. Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon. Director Thomas, are you still recused?
No, I'm okay. And aye.
Thank you. West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
I must recuse.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to our next agenda item. Action item number 16, adopt the racial equity action plan. And we have our own SACOG staff member, Casey Lizon, to present this.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me? All right. No. Okay.
Do you want to press the button on your mic?
On.
Oh, sorry. I will bring you my mic. Is it working?
It doesn't amplify to the same level in the room in this area, but
Okay.
it should be, tell us online if you.
I will use my outside voice.
Okay.
Thank you.
I knew
All
there
right.
was a term that I was looking for earlier. Outside voice,
There we go.
that's the one.
I would like to give a brief overview of the process that got us here today for this racial equity action plan that's before you, because it has been several months. Your board adopted a statement of a racial equity statement of change and commitment at the beginning of this year that included a commitment to develop a racial equity action plan. That statement was developed over the prior year by the board's Race Equity and Inclusion Working Group. Immediately upon the adoption of that statement, SACOG went out to act on the commitments, the first of which was to listen and learn to our stakeholders in the region. We did secure an equity consultant to help us with this. That is Venture with Purpose. They are here today if there are any questions as we go through this item. That listening and learning phase included listening sessions that reached out to our stakeholders in local government, our transit agencies, SACOG staff, our business and civic partners in the Prosperity Partnership, and community-based organizations. In total, we had over 80 participants in those stakeholder listening sessions. We also held one-on-one interviews for the REI working group members. We had 14 of the 20 of those working group members take us up on those interviews. And we used all of the learnings from those sessions and worked with Venture through some capacity building sessions for our staff to translate that work, those learnings as directly as possible into the goals, objectives, and actions that you see in the action plan today. We brought a working draft of this action plan to the REI working group this summer, and also at the same time shared it back to all of our stakeholders. We presented it to your board committees in early September. The questions that we had for all of these presentations was, what is missing? Have we heard the learnings correctly? What is exciting to you? What looks like it could be controversial or difficult? What questions do you have? And in summary, the feedback that we received was all additive to this, to what we initially received. We got comments that wanted clarification, that wanted us to be more specific, that wanted to see how we were going to really operationalize the goals in the action plan. And so we took all that input, created the final draft that's before you. Some of the objectives were consolidated or moved around, but nothing has been outright deleted based on all of the input that we have received so far. So that's how we got here. And now I'd like to share some words on the action plan itself and what would happen if you are to adopt it. The goals and objectives in this plan establish the initial priorities for what SACOG can do to implement its statement of change and commitment. We know that these goals and objectives will need to evolve over time. The board is responsible for adopting the goals and objectives in this plan. You can see all of those laid out. They start on page 6 in the action plan document. The Race Equity Inclusion Working Group will, as we've outlined in this action plan, oversee implementation of the plan and make recommendations to the SACOG board Based on review of the plan progress reports and any changes, they will make recommendations of any changes to the plan that would increase its effectiveness. The executive director and the management team are responsible for implementing the plan. Now, as noted through all of the objectives in the action plan, there is a cycle of planning, implementation, and evaluation. And so that is how the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group will be overseeing this and reviewing this, and then how they will have information to make recommendations to the full board for any adjustments that may need to be made over time. At least quarterly within the organization, the management team will be taking an agency-wide look at this plan, what resources are needed to carry out the identified actions, how it interacts with other planned work, and whether any changes need to be made as well on the internal side of this. And I think finally, I will just make a note that when the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group reviewed this final plan, they made one change to it. I noted that in the staff report, just the number of workshops that would come to the board. And then it did receive a unanimous recommendation from the Policy and Innovation Committee to move it forward to your board. I will also say that, and we've had this conversation with our staff, that a lot of this looks like new work. It is in some cases new work. In some cases it is work that we had already committed to do, and we are integrating it into this action plan to ensure that it is consistent with the board's statement of changing commitment. And then when we talk about operationalizing racial equity, the goal is that anything that is new will ultimately not be a separate thing, but it really will be integrated into all of the work that SACOG carries out. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I also invite any of the board members who also sit on the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group to provide any comments.
Great, great. I will open it up before I make my comments. To any board member, any director?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What kind of study was done in terms of the amount of time and resources? I've read this. I completely embrace the equity statement and the overarching goals in the strategic plan. This gets very detailed. And I'm imagining, I've run organizations before with over 100 people in them. And my sense of this is going to take a lot of time. And with existing staff, time is a zero-sum game. So the only way to solve additional time requirements is adding more staff. Has there been any kind of study of the staffing requirements to fully execute this? Because I'm presuming if the board says, do this, the action is going to be to charge forward. Is the budget sufficient to do this? Is the staffing sufficient to do this? And I think that's a reasonable question when you look at the details in this plan.
Yes, very reasonable question. And I think even in the fiscal impact section, we acknowledge that there will need to be some budget amendments that moving forward.
Well, there's some. Have you quantified that?
So we're in the process of doing that now. In part, we don't have the full answer because we don't want to act on this plan until the board has adopted it. But we will be actually, as of next week, having a management discussion about what the needs will be. As you can see in there, we've timed out all of the different objectives. And so there are phases to this work. When we talk about planning, that is in some cases, it's a lower level of work than the execution of it. In some cases, that's the reverse.
Again, I'm sorry.
I want to also add that there are activities within this, some particular activities that we are already planning to take on. One of them, actually two of them, the blueprint engagement, that there's an entire objective about that. And that is already work that we are planning to do through the blueprint planning process. So that's one of those pieces that is already budgeted within our work program, and we are trying to make sure that it is done consistently with the goals of this action plan.
Again, you mentioned that there would be some adjustments and they'd be reflected in the budget. Since the budget is a primary document, right, I would suggest that we delay approval of this until we know what it's going to cost and the details. Now, again, as I said, I've the overarching goal, the statement on that inequity, I fully embrace. And I see a number of wonderful things within this. But again, I see a lot of time and a lot of money. And there's, there's a limit on money, right?
Yeah, so look, if I can weigh in, it's a very, as Casey said, a reasonable question. The reason, in some ways, that we have this racial equity action plan that is so detailed, as you say, it's a very high level of specificity about what happens when, what happens the first year, what happens the second year. Number one is because we want to make good on the statement that you adopted. When you or anybody else asks us, now what are you doing to actually operationalize racial equity? We have an answer for you. Casey said we're going to be doing further work on this as a management team, but I want to assure you the staff has actually already done the work to figure out how we're staffing this, how we're accommodating it. Things that actually we were going to do next year, we've delayed because we can't sufficiently accommodate that. So I feel very comfortable that we can embrace and operationalize this work without a huge resource increase. Partly, it is also about us learning how to do things differently, ask different kinds of questions, do different kinds of community engagement. We've had a lot of work on the blueprint engagement, the long-range plan, as Casey just referenced. And so it's sort of retooling our existing budget and our resources and thinking differently, engaging communities a little bit differently. You all approved grants just a second ago to actually give to community-based organizations. So maybe we can't give you a dollar figure, but I can give you a very certain high level of confidence that we can embrace this and do it. Will it be easy? No, because it's about thinking differently and actually engaging differently with our local governments and with our communities. But I'm more so than many things we bring before you, have a very high level of confidence that there's a level of specificity in here that means that we can get this done next year and report back, as you'll be getting lots of updates next year in terms of progress.
Well, with respect, and you know how much I respect your leadership and skills, without that specificity, and it's a dollar cost and what's going to get moved off of the plate to make room for this. I think it'd be very interesting. In fact, I wouldn't feel responsible voting for this without having that information. And again, with respect.
Sure. And I guess my final thought on that is, as a board, you adopt, strategic plans, transit plans, right? You tell a mega region working group, you tell us to go forth and execute, right? And our job is to figure out how we do that reasonably within the resources and the budget. And that's exactly how we would approach this as well. But, absolutely fair question. Believe me, we've had a lot of discussion internally about what this means. I'm just giving you my level of confidence on this because we've had so much discussion internally and working this through, and happy to come back if you want us to come back again in November and give you an update on what this looks like. The Policy and Innovation Committee is your budget committee, as Eric was describing earlier on legal services, right? They will be the ones to look at resources and budget and allocation and all those things. I think more so than the budget, it is us thinking differently about how we do our work, which I think is the intention behind this.
Director Sloan. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking Chair and Committee Chair Jennings and Vice Chair Frericks for their leadership on this committee, and also Casey and all the SACOG staff and all the nonprofits that have put tremendous amount of effort into this document, not just in writing and developing, but the background from the interviews and the conversations and the meetings that have taken place. I want to take a moment to address Director Branscombe. I appreciate your concern. I mean, I think we all have a fiscal mindset, but I got to say, we got to start somewhere, and intentions, mean more when we put things in writing. And I think any plan that we implement, and Mr. Corliss mentioned about all the plans that we were mandated to do, something like this is to demonstrate the value and the intention behind it. And in order to implement, we have to put it first in writing. And I think this is what this document is. It's a testament of what we're trying to, the direction we're trying to go as a board, as a region. And it's about, to me, it's an all ships rising story, you know? So how do we address inequities that have taken place or continue today? But, you know, it's a step towards a vision of a greater prosperity for this entire region. And so you can't implement a plan, I'll say it again, you can't implement a plan if it's not in writing. And so we can't implement a plan if it's not adopted. So I understand the concern about resourcing, and, you know, we'll have to find a way to balance it. But to say that, you know, we wouldn't move ahead with it without a specific budget at this time, I think, you know, isn't appropriate. I think we definitely need to adopt this if we feel this is what this exhibits or illustrates what we want to where we want to go, and I personally believe it is. And the good thing about it is there's this is a work in progress. So I look forward to seeing how things develop, how it gets implemented, what changes maybe will take place. But as a document and where it stands today, I wholeheartedly support it and the work that's been done with it. So with that, and I'll defer to others for other comments. Thank you.
So I chair this group, and my mom taught me a long time ago a business plan that I followed for most of my life. It says you plan, you organize, you implement, you monitor, you recognize. You plan, you organize, you implement, you monitor, you recognize. And we've spent a lot of time planning and organizing, a lot of time. For a subject matter of racial equity that is long overdue, especially for an organization of this magnitude. And so I say all that to say it is now time to put a lot of time into implementation, and that's what an action plan does. It is a plan of action that moves you to implementation so you can get to the point that you recognize your accomplishments and the sins of the past. There are a lot of people who put in a lot of time into this action plan. And I feel it would be irresponsible for this board to not adopt a vision that everyone has put together when we know we're going to get quarterly updates if we ask for them, monthly updates if we ask for them. We can get as involved as we want. And we have a subcommittee that is working on the budgeting of this situation. I just really urge us to move this organization forward with this racial equity action plan. It is a plan that is past due. It is a bill that has been unpaid. And there are people who have put in a lot of sweat equity into making sure that this action plan before us is one that represents the organization, represents the work that we want to do. So I strongly urge you to move this forward while understanding from a business standpoint that we got to understand costs. I run a business, I run a nonprofit. And I tell my staff all the time, for without a vision, the people shall perish. You got to have a vision, and you got to move towards that vision if you ever hope to be able to move forward, even though you may not have all the resources. But if you don't move towards that vision, then you're stuck in the past. I don't want to be stuck in the past. I don't want to be in this organization stuck in the past. I'm here about moving us forward as a group, as a team, moving us forward. So I strongly urge that we recognize the tremendous amount of work that's been done to this point. Staff, volunteers, board members, I can't even tell you all the groups that have been involved. And this has been before us many times. I would strongly suggest that we move this forward. And with that, I'd be looking for a motion.
Through the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, there are other comments.
Move to approve.
Right. So I don't know what order, so let me, and you can, let's go left to right. Director Frost.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I couldn't tell who was talking about the budget earlier, which director was had concerns about the budget.
Director Branscombe, Director Frost.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say I appreciated those comments, and initially when we were first working our way through the work group that was talking about racial equity, some of my concerns around this plan was that we were not including some foundational concepts that are, basically at the heart, go to the heart of American liberty, which is equality and the law. And on top of those concerns about the budget, I have questions regarding the JPA agreement between all the jurisdictions. And does this supersede that JPA contract that we have? Does this have an impact on that in any way? And then I further just wanted to say my concern about this is that we were not able to include equality and the law, which are basic concepts to American liberty. So the question about the JPA, and I'm probably not going to support it because equity is where I believe in inclusion. And I think it's really important that we all are treated equally, no matter what our color. To take away from one to lift another, there's a taking. And I don't know how you do that and still accomplish those foundational concepts that we live by in America, which is equality, liberty, and justice for all. And so that's my concern. And I do have a question about that contract, the JPA agreement.
Director Frost, can I just attempt to answer that for a second? And it is, if you haven't done it recently, it's good to go back and look at the JPA bylaws and why SACOG was created. And we even had this discussion. This is actually relevant for the next topic on our strategic plan. You all often come here and think of us, and it's not just you, as a transportation planning agency. And that is largely because those are the resources that we have been lucky enough, strategic enough, hardworking enough to get from the federal and state government, which also could be taken away. But it's not just transportation that is really our charge here. And it's good to go back and read why the cities and counties came together 40 years ago, updated 20 years ago, to tackle the biggest problems that face the region, right? And so I think that's really important. I want to assure everybody there is nothing in the JPA that is in conflict with our racial equity action plan or that would have to change. Far from it, actually, and you know my feeling about this. And if you just want to take it from a pure economic perspective, we just passed a tipping point in this region to majority people of color. And those are important thresholds. The state passed it about 20 years ago. The US as a nation will pass it in about 15 or 20 more years. And if we are not inclusive, if we are not intentional around equity and inclusion and racial equity and racial injustice, then we will fail. That is my belief, my strongly held belief. And not to begin a debate on this morning, because I know we have had this discussion, equality may be the destination, equity is the path to get there. And so I appreciate concerns. I appreciate concerns on budgets. I appreciate concerns on that all of you raise. You should raise these because this is not an easy issue. You know, if we wanted to have easy, quick board meetings, we wouldn't bring things like this up. But it's a critical issue if all of you and us as a 6-county region are going to succeed, just even purely economically. Because our population, our demographics are changing so fast. The disparities that we have in this region by race, ethnicity, right, are huge, and we need to tackle those, and we think that's really important. So,
Director Bain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Director Soon for his comments. I echo those same comments, and I'd like to thank the staff, the committee members, and all the volunteers for their time and effort to develop what we have before us today. I'd like to thank the volunteers, and I'd like to thank you, Chair Jennings. I want to thank you for your leadership. And having said this, that I'd like to move to adopt the Racial Equity Action Plan.
Thank you for your motion. Director Guerrero.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in and say I am incredibly
Director
proud
Guerrero.
of the work that this group has done. I joined this committee and I honestly wasn't sure what we were going to do. And I have learned so much. This is a strong group of people, and I hope all the directors will have confidence to know this was a really very diverse group itself that came together. They worked really hard through these details. It's an important message that we get out to our communities, that we are aware and we are making those first steps. And I, as a fiscal conservative person, I so appreciate the budget comments, but I think that's a completely separate issue. And certainly we will address the fact this isn't a blank check. We will develop and create a budget to implement, but I highly support what's been done. And I hope everyone will have the confidence to know this team's worked really hard to put out a great product. And definitely I'm a better person for going through this process.
Thank you. Director Mayor Guerrero.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. I'll try to unmute myself a little faster here. I just want to say this is this recommendation before you is long overdue. You know, the precedent that has already been set in making changes to enhance racial equity across, you know, all sectors of our life, including our day-to-day, you know, collaboration with people. As you see, leadership is now in question. And we've seen what happened in Los Angeles. And I think as leaders, we need to take action today. This is critical for us to demonstrate that we are prioritizing the needs of our community. There is no way I can imagine how we can move forward without this. In the decisions we are making on a daily basis here in our own cities, but also as SACOG Board of Directors, in that we are making plans for transportation, for community growth, and we cannot do it without some of what is the recommendations here. And I think as far as financing, that should all be integrated together. And so I am very supportive, appreciate the across the board collaboration that we've had in participation of preparing this document that you have before you. And I also want to thank the staff for their dedication and commitment to making this you know, plan, you know, move forward. And so I just want to applaud the staff and everyone who's been involved. And Chair Jennings, you've been an excellent you know, leader on making this happen. So I greatly appreciate that. And Board Lucas Frericks has been also leading this early on. And so I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Haudeshult.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Jennings. You know, as I familiarize myself with this process, I'm so pleased that you've captured in here underserved communities, because I think that's the real core value here is, and what SACOG has been doing for a couple of decades with their very extensive outreach into communities. And so I think that this will really be a benefit, and especially in rural communities. I think this will be a benefit to a lot of people. So I'm ready to support it.
Thank you, sir. Director Burris.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo Director Haudeshult's sentiments about specifically identifying underserved communities and that being a core value here. I think that when we're talking about equity in, you know, all of the areas where we failed in the past, there's always going to be a category of we don't know what we don't know until we do. And I appreciate the fact that we're looking at this with the lens of knowing that we may need to adjust over time to try to do the right thing. And I'm excited to move forward. Thank you.
Chair Jennings soon seconds Director Baines's motion.
Okay. Director Baines' motion has been seconded by Director Soon. Director Saylor.
I think Director Saylor is speaking in an ancient language.
What did he say?
This is where you yell, "Here, here," right?
What did he say?
Couldn't have said it
Okay.
better myself.
Lynette, would you please call the roll, please?
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Director Desmond.
You know, I was going to give accolades to our chair. Of course, I told him 10 minutes ago I wanted to speak and he was about to cut me off. But, you know, first I want to echo the heartfelt sentiments of Director Saylor. I appreciate those comments that none of us could understand. But in all seriousness, thank you to my friend and our chair, Director Jennings, Chair Jennings, for his heartfelt, passionate comments and hard work on this, and everybody who participated in this. I very much appreciate it. You know, I think a lot about the comments from Director Frost, and we all believe in equality, but this is an opportunity to address those historical times where we did not invest equally in our communities across this region. And as someone, as a supervisor who has the privilege to represent a very large urbanized unincorporated community, but it has a lot of poverty in that community, a lot of disadvantaged communities, 2 environmental justice communities. And I think this statement, this effort, this action plan is going to help us look through the lens of correcting some of these disinvestments or lack of investments in these communities. We have a terrific opportunity through this body to do that. And of course, James knows that I will certainly be advocating for the investments in these communities. It's certainly in my supervisory district that desperately need them. But just I was going to second it until Director Soon chimed in, but I'm very much in support of this action plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to thank the chair and Lucas for your role in moving this forward over the last couple of years. It's been a lot of work, and I thought, you know, we had a lot of work just to get to the statement, and now we're getting actually to the implementation and the real work. And so I'm excited to see that go forward. I really want to thank staff because there was so much work put into this. And just the one-on-ones, you know, getting the consultants in place and going to the committees. We had a great conversation in land use just, you know, last month or earlier this month. I forget, my time's running together now during election season. But I just want to really thank everybody for the work here, and also, you know, for my colleagues and directors in Placer County. Same thing for us in El Dorado County. You know, I think ensuring that the rural, I mean, there's underserved communities in the rural areas as well. And so I really want to thank staff for ensuring that those communities are going to be part of this as well, and feel very comfortable with moving this forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more hands up, I am convinced that we all want the same thing. I'm convinced that we're all moving in the same direction. I appreciate the conversation that we've had today on all sides, because we do need to be looking at financially how we move this forward. And I think we'll have time to do that. But at the same time, there's a price to pay for inactivity. There's a price to pay for non-action. There's a price to pay for not doing what should have been done in the past. And that price is much bigger than the price we're talking about going forward. And so with that, it's been moved by Baines, seconded by Soon. Would you please call the roll?
Director Baines?
Aye.
Howdeshelt for Bernasconi?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
As I said in my comments, I feel like we're flying blind in terms of budget and opportunity cost. And again, I embrace, Chair, the concept and the work and respect all that, but given my concerns, I'll abstain at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Boulahan?
Aye.
Burris?
Aye.
Clark Kretz?
Yes.
Desmond?
Aye.
Frericks?
Aye.
Frost,
No.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore absent, Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner absent, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton absent, New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier absent, Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you very much. James, I just want to make sure we're moving on to item number 17.
We are moving on to the strategic plan. Mr. Chair, I will say we are a little squeezing our amazing workshop on Salt Lake City and the Utah region. So let me suggest this, because you've seen the strategic plan quite a bit. I will forego a presentation, even though I know this is incredibly important. However, you've had many bites at this. I'm happy to answer any questions. We haven't had a strategic plan update in 12 years. Appreciate the staff's engagement, the board's engagement. In your packet, you'll see just all the engagement we've had on this, and board weighing in on mission and vision, triple bottom line, and I think really also importantly, sort of the how of how we're going to get this done. So happy to answer any questions if you have them. I'll leave it at that.
Seeing no questions from the board, no hands raised, is there a motion to move this item forward?
So
Move
moved.
for approval, Kozlowski.
Member Branson and
Second from Kozlowski.
can I get you second?
Yes.
Can I take your second? Thank you, sir. All right, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Director Baines.
Aye.
Howdeshelt for Bernasconi. Director Howdeshelt, if you're there, could you please indicate your vote? Okay, I'll come back. He might have logged off. Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Aye.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond,
Aye.
Frericks, Frost,
Aye.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore absent, Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner absent, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton absent, New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier absent, Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Aye.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
and Director Howdeshelt, could you indicate your vote? I'll mark him absent, but he is still in the meeting. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, thank you. Our next action item, agenda item is the workshop, scenario planning for equity, economy, and environment. It's the Envision Utah case study, and I'm gonna let James Corliss give a quick introduction and kick this off so we can enjoy our presenters today.
All right, Chair Jennings, thank you so much. I appreciate your willingness to have me give an abbreviated presentation or none at all on the previous item, because this really is such an important workshop and I think incredibly timely. So we've got two great speakers this morning. They're going to talk a little bit about the lessons of scenario planning, of transportation, land use, and infrastructure over a lot of work over 2 decades in Utah. We've got two great speakers. Ari Bruning is the Executive Director of Envision Utah, who you're going to hear a little bit more about, which is a nonprofit in Utah that came together over 20 years ago because the future trajectory of their state was not looking good. Actually, here in this region, a little around 20 years ago, we were inspired by Envision Utah. and understood that we were on a very similar troubling trajectory and came together to develop our blueprint. And as you know, we are embarking on a long-range plan for the 6 counties right now that we have branded Blueprint, precisely because we think we need to take a step back and ask the big picture questions about where we're heading, about what our possible futures look like around how growth and housing and jobs and transportation could either help us be on the right path or not on the right path. I think Mr. Bruning is going to show you some really good data today. I know many of you love to see the charts and the data, but I commend them in many ways. And one of which is really setting out a vision, following through on implementation, and using a lot of great statistics and data to track how they're doing in terms of their commitments to quality growth. I also want to say right after Ari is going to be Andrew Gruber, who is my counterpart at the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is the MPO for the Greater Salt Lake region. And again, so many of you who actually came on that trip in June, I know you may have to dust off your memory banks a little. I think Andrew's going to show you a couple of slides from our trip back there. But I just want to say the lessons from Utah are so important for us as we embark on our long-range plan and our pathways and everything that we've been out to all the councils and boards about over the next 12 to 24 months. So great timing. Without further ado, Ari Bruning.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm excited to meet you all virtually. And if you want to bring up my slides there, little brief introduction to Envision Utah. We are 25 years old this year, so you're welcome to come join our celebration in December if you'd like. But I'm going to tell a little bit of the history of how we began and how we got to where we are. So if you'll just go to the next slide. So in the mid to late 90s, people were worried about where Utah was heading. We were growing very, very rapidly. We're still growing very, very rapidly. So the projection was the Wasatch Front area would add about 1 million people by the year 2020. And that had all these implications for air quality, how much water we were going to use, how much land we were going to use, traffic congestion, you name it. These things might sound familiar to you in Sacramento. And so I'm going to show you a video about the launch of this Envision Utah process, where people came together and said, we need to tackle these issues and figure out where we're going. And I like this video because it's a collection of news clips from the time. And I think it makes the point about how big of an effort this was and how widespread the information about it was, that everybody seemed to be aware of what was going on. So let's see if this video works. It's always dangerous to try to do this over Zoom. So might have to click again.
Getting prepared for the future is the focus of a new Utah partnership. Members of the Coalition for Utah's Future met together today to introduce their campaign.
Planning for Utah's future growth is the aim of a new coalition of business and government leaders.
A new coalition of business and government leaders is focusing on Utah's growth as well.
They call themselves Utah Quality Growth Public-Private Partnership. That may be the world's most forgettable name.
The group heard from Governor Levitt today and will study challenges related to transportation, air quality, and housing, among other things.
Cooperation, partnerships, using government where it should be, but most of all, becoming a generation of planners.
I think that if we take a look at the options, that of doing nothing, sitting on our hands and letting growth just go its own way, seek its own level, so to speak, that sometime in the future, not very far out perhaps, probably as soon as 5 or 10 years, certainly in 20 years and beyond, we'd look back and say, why didn't we try?
If we're to maintain the quality of our life and our economic viability, we need to develop and sustain a broadly supported, long-term and comprehensive strategy for our future.
The coalition wants the government, businesses, and community to work together, so they'll be sending out surveys to ask the public what issues concern you.
Are they going to make any difference? Time will tell.
It's still too early. Okay. Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
All right, so you get a sense there for what kinds of people were involved. We had the owner of the Utah Jazz, we had the governor, a number of others who were all backing the effort. But above all, it was an effort to engage the public in this conversation. And if you go to the next slide, this shows the
Prepared for the future is the focus of a new Utah partnership. Members.
So this next slide will show you the elements of the process that was pioneered by Envision Utah. There we go. So the first piece was bringing together all the stakeholders. So these are people who have expertise or who have some ability to affect the outcomes, some decision-making power. The second piece was studying the values of Utahns. What was it they were actually wanting to achieve? You know, not just the immediate need. Somebody might say traffic is something I want to solve, but what actually are they trying to achieve with that? And that might be, I want more time to spend with my family rather than sitting in traffic. And then putting together scenarios for what the world could look like in the year 2020, and then doing public outreach to engage the public. So we're going to go through each of these really fast since I know we're behind on time. So let's go to the next slide. Stakeholders. So not just the elected officials, but all the business leaders and developers and so forth all came together. I was not there at the time, but I understand that there were hundreds of meetings held with stakeholders and with the public to dive into different issues. And the key here is that these stakeholders go through the same learning process together. And we as Envision Utah, we have no power to implement things, but those with power to implement go through this learning process, and then they go forth and they do implement. So if you go to the next slide, this was, I think, the first time that this values study technique was applied to this field of regional visioning. And this is a really complicated map, but this shows you what it is that Utahns said they really like about Utah and want to preserve. And kind of this purple blob of stuff is they just like the people in Utah. They like the fact that they're friendly, good people. It's safe here. It's a family-friendly place. And 39% identified that as their dominant orientation. There's a lot of complicated analysis behind this. The yellow blob is they like the good jobs here combined with the low cost of living, which unfortunately has been slipping away the last few years. And then I guess, what color is that? Salmon? The salmon colored blob. People like the scenic beauty of Utah and the access to the outdoors. So those are kind of the three big picture things that people really love about Utah and wanted to preserve in the face of all this growth. And this values study identified, number one, what are the things we prioritize, but also number two, how do you talk about things in ways that resonate with people? Because you get the language that people use out of this kind of study. And as an example, in the late 90s, a decision was made not to use the term smart growth. Instead, they talked about quality growth because smart growth, number one, was not a term that people were familiar with. And if they were, it sounded like a bunch of Eastern liberals trying to tell us what to do. That's kind of the impression. So if you go to the next slide, the experts came together. They built some scenarios for the year 2020 and how Utah could grow, modeled those for their impacts on the things that we just looked at that people cared about. So we had one scenario of we just continue the trends of the past with larger lot sizes, auto-oriented development. And let's just flash through these pretty quickly. So you go to scenario B, a little more compact. You want to go to the next slide? Maybe it's just my screen that's not updating. There we go. A little more compact. This was a compilation of all the existing plans of the different cities. And if you go to the next one, scenario C, now we're looking at more infill redevelopment, more transit-oriented development. We're building more light rail, for example. And then if you go to the next slide, scenario D, much more compact, more infill. So you're starting to get this contrast for how we could grow by 2020. Go to the next slide.
Hey, Ari, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say one thing for our board, just to kind of guide them a little bit. So that A, B, C, D, right, those scenarios, watch how this kind of now gets pulled through into data and sort of different kinds of futures. And remember that when we talk about pathways in 2023 in our next plan, we're doing something similar to this next year. Okay, go ahead, Ari. Thank you.
Yeah. And one point to make too is these scenarios combine land use and transportation decisions because we know that those things work together. So this was the late 90s. So a survey was done on these scenarios, and you can see this is a newspaper insert in the late 90s rather than an internet survey like we do today. And you can see there's some data on each of the scenarios that people were given, like the average lot size and how much agricultural land is consumed and so forth. Went out in every newspaper. I believe it was mailed out to people who didn't take the newspaper, which was, shocking in the 90s that people wouldn't take the newspaper. And if you go to the next slide, based on the feedback that came back, I think about 20,000 people mailed in surveys and tended to choose a scenario somewhere close to C or D on those ones that were shown, which was very different than how we were growing. And based on that, there was a 10 county quality growth strategy that was created. You can see the 6 goals there. There were also 42 strategies behind those goals for how we would meet those, and some metrics for what that would mean by the year 2020. And if you go to the next slide, 2020, it's come and gone, right? So in the year 2020, we said, well, how are we doing? Have we met this vision? And I'm going to show you some data. And I guess the bottom line is we did pretty well. So let's start with the next slide, which is the population projections. Turns out the demographers got it almost exactly right. So we added those 1 million people that they said we were going to add by the year 2020. So it makes the comparison really easy between how we would have ended up and how we actually ended up. So if you go to the next one, this is vehicle miles traveled per capita per day. And as you look at these charts, there's a blue line that's where we were projected to be if we didn't do anything different. And then there's a yellow line, which is where they thought we would be if we implemented the quality growth strategy by 2020. And then the red line is where we actually ended up. So in the 90s, they thought that even with these better growth patterns, more light rail and so forth, we still would increase our vehicle miles traveled per capita. And actually, we were able to reduce it just a little bit. There are probably a whole lot of reasons for that. But if you go to the next slide, one of those reasons is that coming out of this visioning effort, people saw in these scenarios the impact of expanding light rail and other public transportation systems. And almost 90% said, I favor expansion of that. And so people went forth, WFRC, who you're going to hear from in a second, reopened their plan, added a whole bunch of public transportation to it. We had a bunch of initiatives to tax ourselves to build rail. And if you go to the next slide, what happened is we built 140 miles of rail. So roughly 70 stations. The goal in the vision was to have 600,000 people who lived within 1,000 steps of a rail station, so about a half mile. We're not quite there yet, but we're making a lot of progress getting there. So we built the rail. We're still working on the transit-oriented development around it. And the next slide shows you how much progress we're making. This slide's a couple of years old now, but since 2010, we looked at the building permits for the 4-county Wasatch Front, where most of our population is. And this is the percent of the building permits, units or square feet that are within a half mile of a rail station. So almost half of our multifamily units, and surprisingly enough to me, hotel square footage and office, and even our retail, almost a third has been within a half mile of a rail station. So that makes a big difference in how people get around, how many choices they have for how they get around and so forth. Okay, and then if you go to the next slide, air quality, it was projected that we might be able to bend the curve just a little bit on our emissions. If you can see that actual line, we actually decreased our emissions by about half. And I don't want to take credit for all of that. A lot of that was EPA just ratcheting down the standards on emissions on cars. But all of that public transportation did play a role. People were driving less, and so our emissions went down. Air quality is a continual challenge here and always will be. But if you go to the next slide, another thing that happened is that we grew much more compactly than we were. So we were projected to use about 130 square miles per decade in our development. That was kind of just continuing our trends. We ended up using about half of that. And as you saw, our population increase was exactly as projected. So what happened? Well, we grew more compactly. Our lot sizes shrunk. We built more apartments, townhomes, and so forth. And a lot of that was just the market shifting that direction. But our cities had to allow that to happen through their zoning in order for it to happen. And I think I've got one more on what happened based on this. You want to go to the next slide? There we go. And so our water use actually plummeted quite a bit, which it turns out is pretty important today. And given the drought we're in, I think you're in the same boat. We significantly cut our per capita water use. A lot of that actually has to do with those more compact growth patterns. So if you have a smaller yard or you're in an apartment, you're using less water. You're watering less. So I think in the interest of time at this point, maybe rather than show you the rest of the slides, maybe I'll summarize. So what I've showed you was the original visioning from the late 90s and what's happened since then. We, a couple times since then, have done a similar large scale effort to engage the public in envisioning for our future. We did it statewide in 2013 through 2015, tackled more topics. We also do projects that we would refer to as implementation projects. So sometimes those will be a geographic area. So we recently finished one for the Utah County, which is the county just to the south of Salt Lake City, where a huge portion of our growth is headed. We'll also do visioning efforts around different topics. So we did a water strategy that we finished, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. We've been tackling education, and we've been just applying the same process to this, where we bring the stakeholders together, we study people's values, we do scenarios, we engage the public, and it has a big impact in just moving the needle. And more recently, we did another values study recently where we found a higher level of concern about growth than we've actually ever seen in our 25-year history. We're seeing more and more people feeling like growth is going to make things worse rather than better. And so we've been partnering with the state and with WFRC and others to launch what we're calling a statewide conversation about growth, which is just getting off the ground over the last several months. So once again, we're doing this large scale engagement of the public. And as you think about it, you need to do that every once in a while because we're growing so fast. We have a lot of people who weren't there last time we did it. And also people just forget. So I don't know of any business who would say, I advertised 7 years ago, I'm good, don't need to advertise again. So it's just a conversation we continually have. So with that, I think I'm done. And I don't know if you want to do questions now or have Andrew go first.
Ari, can you hang on a little bit till after Andrew presents?
Sure.
For questions, that'd be great. And I just want to do one teaser reminder. Those similar kinds of charts about are we on track, are we off track? We actually presented to you at the beginning of your 2-year board cycle, January 2021. We'll make sure we get that back out to you. So we have some similar data and graphics, and I think generally speaking, we are not showing something that rosy. We are not on track. So just a reminder. But again, I think part of the story is a growth vision that is led civically, as you heard in those videos there that Ari showed you, and then a sort of a full court press around transportation infrastructure to invest to support that vision around growth. And helping lead that charge is my counterpart and one of the funniest MPO directors in the country. Wow. I know, I'm just setting you up, trying to make sure people are awake here. Andrew Gruber, Executive Director of the Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Thanks, I didn't realize I was supposed to do a comedy routine, James, but I'll make some effort. Okay. It's really great to see all of you again. I'm Andrew Gruber from the Wasatch Front Regional Council. It's actually really cool to be with you today because I'm seeing several people. A lot of you don't have your cameras on, but I'm seeing several of you in the room and on Zoom who came out to visit. And so we got a chance to spend some time together and to talk, and I got to learn about your region. I just want to say, we had such a wonderful time hosting you when you came out here. Sometimes you have to look at your life or your region through the lens of an outsider to get perspective. And so we really enjoyed having you visit with us. And James has said to me, and Mr. Chair, you said to me also that you'll return the favor to us if we want to come. So we're looking forward to coming visit you at some point in the future. I also do want to note, James said we're counterparts. James, you can cover your ears for this. I hope you all know, I'm sure you do, how really terrific James is. I've known James for a long time, from when he was in DC and now in Sacramento. I regard him, many people regard him as a real national leader and model in regional thinking. We turned to him, I turned to him for advice, and he's been a great partner and a great friend. So you're really lucky that you were able to get him out to Sacramento. Lots of great things in Sacramento, so maybe it wasn't such a hard case to make. And also, I want to say, I tuned in a little early, and I was able to listen to some of your discussion about equity and diversity. And I just want to commend you on the work that you're doing in that space. And then as you think about Utah, you should know that Utah is perhaps not as homogeneous as you might believe. We are probably, well, I know this for a fact, less diverse than California, that is for sure, but we're on the same trajectory. And so thinking about equity, access to opportunities is something that we're doing in our work. And I commend you, and we'll keep looking to you for the work that you're doing in that space for ideas as well. Okay, so to the point of our discussion here today, I'm going to revisit a few of the things that some of you, those of you that were lucky enough to visit us, got to see in Utah. And I love following Ari because he looked at some of the history. And I'll just say, when you do visioning and planning, you can't just declare victory, right? It is a continual process. And we are in the midst of that process as well, continuing to vision and plan. So there's the regional work that SACOG and WFRC does. But what I'm going to show you also a little bit is some images of how at the local level, it takes leadership and engagement and collaboration between local elected officials and community members and the private sector developers, and also the intersection, as was noted already, of transportation, housing, economic development, open space preservation, and lots of hard work and leadership to make all of these things happen, to stay on a trajectory to have great quality of life in the future. So I am going to show you on my screen here. Okay, just give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen. Yes, terrific. Okay, so quick orientation again. Here's our region. This is an image of the Wasatch Choice 2050 regional vision. So we've already adopted this and we're working to implement it as we go. The area that you visited, when those of you that came out, was here in Salt Lake County. And as you noted, we're bounded by the mountains on one side and the lakes on the other. And so most of our state's growth is happening in this geographically constrained area, which creates challenges and opportunities. What I'm going to do here is I'll show you this, these images here in the slideshow. Okay, and I'm going to whip through these here. On the day one, we did 5 stops, some right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake, where our core of development is, and then also some what you could call inner ring suburbs, where there's redevelopment and infill happening, particularly around the existing transit system. So that's one type of inner ring suburb. So the inner ring core of the region, then the close-in suburbs. And then on the next day, we went out further into areas that were greenfield development at the sort of at the end of the transit lines. But you'll note all of this is happening, as I was noting, around our transit lines and our transit stations. Greenfield development, and then also down here in Utah County, our new and highly successful bus rapid transit. So I'll show you some of the images. I'm not going to hit all those stops. I'm going to give you a little bit of refresher on 4 of the places that you visited. First, we'll come back to near Salt Lake City. We have a town called South Salt Lake City, and we visited a track station. That's our light rail system, and the development that's happening around that light rail station. Here's actually an image from above the station here and the land use and development that's happening in that area. So you'll recognize yourselves, some of our group that were here talking to some of our local elected officials about the development that's happening on the ground. And you can see this is right across from the track station. You see multi-family housing and a mix of uses, some ground level retail, really being designed intentionally around that transit station. And then a mix of housing types. So what we try to do is the closer into the transit station, we have more intensity, and then gradually the intensity declines as you move out a little further. So a mix of housing types in that inner ring suburb. Then I'll show you, in contrast to inner ring, a greenfield development. This is an area, another city called South Jordan City. It's sort of on the outskirts of development in our area, in a master plan, a really large master plan community that we refer to as a Daybreak. And you can see when this was developed, it was done with transit, transportation, and land use at the exact same time. This blue line actually represents light rail line. And that was actually, much of the work on that was done even before the housing was developed, done in conjunction. So here, some of you will remember talking with our Mayor Don Ramsey, looking out at the development. Now, again, keep in mind, this is an outer suburb, and what you're seeing in this image is beautiful landscaping and quality, but a mix of housing types, right? Even in an outer suburb, it's served by transit, and it has multifamily, mostly owner-occupied housing, and super, super popular. Here's that transit line, as I noted, coming right into the heart of the community. And here's a bird's eye view, what you can do for quality of life, preservation of access to the outdoors and nature, but a mix of housing types. And as you sort of look around the image, you can see in certain areas more dense housing, street fronting, and then mixed in with single family, smaller lot, single family development, really integrated together. And this area right here in the middle of the picture is office. There's a University of Utah Hospital has a location there, restaurants, shopping, all integrated together in this community. Just a little more imagery of how nice it is out there. Here's another example you can take from this picture. You can see that there's a mix of housing types, some high end and some, more moderate income mixed together. And then this is an image of that downtown area I was telling you about, with the shopping and the residential really activated even in a suburban center. So planning for all of that. Now, I mentioned you before, let's go south, down. Now, you may remember the group rode the front runner, the commuter rail, down to Orem and Provo to look at what we call UVX, our bus rapid transit, right? So this is, what BRT is? It's like a train on rubber wheels. It has higher speed, more functionality than a regular bus, but certainty of where the route is so that it can encourage development to occur around those bus rapid transit stations. And what you can see on this, okay, so you took the front runner. Here you are again. You took the front runner, you got off of the front runner, and then you walked out in to look around the town. Now you rode front runner down here, you got off down here in Provo, got on the bus rapid transit, and this BRT system connects downtown Provo, Brigham Young University, BYU University, connects into the city of Orem and to UVU University. So it connects two universities on either end with the front runner station through the heart of two cities. And it has been very, very successful and very popular. It just opened about 2 years ago, and we're not charging any fares right now, zero fare. Students, workers, lots of others are using this bus rapid transit system. So here you go, you get off of the front runner, and then there's the bus rapid transit and other bus service right integrated there. This is actually an image of what that bus rapid transit vehicle looks like. It's an extended vehicle. There are stations that are built, so it feels kind of like a train station. And most of the right-of-way where the bus actually runs is in a dedicated lane, so it doesn't get stuck in traffic. So it functions better than a regular bus, but doesn't have the same level of cost as building rail. Here you are riding on the bus rapid transit. I'll note that people take their bikes on the BRT, students and others to mix in bike commuting and transit commuting. And then here's an example of what the construction actually looks like in a roadway of the bus rapid transit. And then here you go. You can actually see an image from above. These are the bus rapid transit stations running down the center of the city street. constructed in the middle of the city street for access. And then, oh, here you go. We got off, we walked, we had lunch. It was very nice. Walked around town. The last stop before you went back to the airport, and we bid you adieu, was another sort of middle tier suburb that is called Sandy City. And they have a civic center. This whole orange area depicted in our vision map is more intensive development, housing, retail, commercial, mixed in with transit. And then the remainder of the community is mainly single family residential. So this is one city saying what works for more intensive development in certain area of our city. And then we keep other areas mainly single family residential. Here's an image of where this is the tracks now, the light rail comes through, and you can see the more intensive development, mixed use development here to the west. There's the track station and the multifamily housing being constructed or that exists already around that track station. Again, right across the street from the track station, more development. Here you all are meeting with Mayor Zoltansky, who has also been a leader. Now, some of these things don't get built in the term of one elected official. Mayor Zoltansky is new. She's worked on the shoulders of and put into place work that her predecessors have done. These things take years and a lot of commitment, but it shows the power of having a plan and then sticking to that plan to make it a reality. And that brings me to the end of our quick whirlwind tour of your visit to Utah. Our vision, which shows all of these, you can zoom in and get a lot more information, is available at the website shown on the screen. And James and team, I'd be more than happy, along with Ari, to attempt to answer any questions. And I'll just say again, it really was a pleasure. It was also a lot of work, but it was a pleasure to welcome you all to Utah, and thanks for visiting. I'll stop sharing that as well.
Andrew and Ari, I just want to, on behalf of all of the directors, I want to thank you for this wonderful presentation. I continue to tell everybody I know about the new Utah that I saw on that trip. It was an incredible vision of what could be. And I think all of us are nodding our heads because we really believe in what you're doing. All the different areas, all the different transit, all the different housing, shopping, just everything that went on. And we were all impressed with it. And the last thing that you said about having a vision and sticking to it, that resonates with me. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to take that as my own to utilize that in my talk track. But I just want to thank you for helping us with this workshop, for letting the entire board see what we saw when we went up there. And my promise to you is, I stand on that promise that when you're ready to come to Sacramento, I got you. I mean, we're going to show you Sacramento in ways that you've never seen it before either. So we got something to show. All right. So I just want to make sure you know that, but I'm going to stand on that promise so you know that you're welcome anytime. All right. So with that, let me
thank you.
Let the rest of the board open up. I will start with Director Gallego.
Thank you. I have to tell you, as a person that was born in beautiful North Ogden, Utah, and went back to attend Weber State, I was so excited to take this trip and see what's changed in the many years since I lived in that area. Both my father and my brother are retired Utah Highway Patrolmen, and I know those roads so well. And I also know that the issue that you have with the inversion level and with air quality. And when I was a kid, it was terrible. It was really, really challenging when those beautiful mountains would trap that air quality. But one of the things, a couple things. One is the opportunity with condos. You guys have so many more opportunities with condo living than we have. And as I'm looking at an aging mom that I would love to get her out of her sprawling ranch in Carmichael and into some kind of condo living, that was really helpful for me to see how popular it is. But I'm wondering too, is how did you get started to get people to be accepting of all the condominium living, and especially where you have it near your single family homes?
Well, Ari, I can make a quick comment on that. You probably can as well. Not easily. I will tell you that we had a real lack of condo or our townhome, or what we refer to as the missing middle type of housing in Utah. There is way more of a market for that than there is supply. And I'll say that one of the two key points I think about that type of development. One is for developers and for cities, it can actually financially make a lot of sense because you generate more value by having more units per acre. So that can help from a financial perspective in development and also in tax revenue. The second thing I think is critical is not just thinking that people are going to want to move into a condo or a townhome that's in the middle of nowhere, right? If they're in the middle of when I say nowhere, I mean not having any amenities around them. If you have a smaller lot or a townhome or a condo that is in proximity to high quality transit, that has shopping, that has parks, that has a supermarket, that has daycare, coordinating those things together in a broader plan it is I think where the magic occurs, because it offers something, a neighborhood style that is appealing to more people. So thinking beyond the parcel and thinking at the transit oriented station area or the neighborhood level brings power in having a mix of uses. We'll put the housing here and the park here and the shopping there and the transit here, and then it comes together as a functioning neighborhood in a way that's more appealing. What do you think, Artie?
I was just going to add to that. Beyond the condo, there are a lot of missing middle, people are calling them missing middle housing types that have done really well in various places in Utah, especially in that Daybreak development. So they might be townhomes, they might be duplexes. They have products that look like a very large single family home, but have 4 units in them. And they've found that the neighbors are much more accepting of that kind of development than they would be of a very large apartment complex or condominium complex or something like that. So that's been really successful. In fact, when I talked to the developers of Daybreak, they said the first village they built, they put a lot of that slightly more dense housing type at the edge because they thought people wouldn't want to live next to it. And they found that people said, I much prefer it to be mixed in. And so they started mixing it in as they went forward. So
it does seem like then it's in your, and that is a Utah phenomenon. It seems like it's new areas. So it seems like it's in your new areas, not necessarily infill. Well, it seems like you've got all these great new areas, but I've just wondered about can you infill? And I say I'm flashing back to, just growing up in the Ogden area. You don't see the rehab or infill as much there as I'm seeing it down, definitely Salt Lake down to Provo, Orem.
I actually think we're doing a pretty good job of achieving a mix. We're being really intentional of trying to take advantage of redevelopment and infill possibilities in areas that are already developed. And so some of those examples, those images I was showing you are existing fully developed areas that have the opportunity to do redevelopment. It might be outmoded commercial areas that are now converting. So what we are striving for, and I think achieving, is a mix of that type of more dense development, mixed use development in greenfield as well as redevelopment areas. That's what we're pushing towards.
Right. Director Soon and then Director Stallard.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to congratulate you both on the accomplishments you've achieved. Those were fantastic numbers. I'm disappointed I wasn't able to attend the tour down there. A question I had for one or both of you is the light rail. We often debate here about whether to extend light rail into the suburban area for utility and whether you have the density. And so I thought I heard in there that it seemed to still be attractive to go into the suburban areas. And I was wondering whether you made some comment about it, and I just wanted to affirm or maybe get clarification whether you already had the density, or if and if you didn't, I mean, how did you deal with the built environment already? The original development patterns. How did you address light rail transportation into those areas?
Ari, why don't you talk about that from the Daybreak perspective?
Well, first of all, let me caveat this. My understanding is that the federal government has changed some of their grant criteria that I'm not sure this would work today, but the Daybreak line was built basically on the promise that density was going to come to that Daybreak area, and the developer actually fronted some of the money for the initial studies for it to get it ready to go when federal money became available, and so it could be built. And I think more broadly, our light rail system was built on old rail corridors. So what's around rail corridors, generally industrial type development. So we've had to retrofit a lot of that area to create the transit oriented development. Again, I don't know if federal funding formulas today would let you build light rail in an industrial corridor like that where the density isn't already there, but maybe Andrew knows more about that.
Well, it'd be harder with the federal funding, but one of the other, it's a really great question you're raising. I think one of the other things to think about in terms of constructing high capacity and therefore more expensive fixed guideway transit is looking for opportunities for value capture, tax increment financing, et cetera. What is the development that can occur along that rail corridor or bus rapid transit corridor also? And then see, are there ways to do some value capture, increase property value, increase sales activity to then turn that around and bond against or capitalize that in some way to help pay for the work that's done. But you're right, if you don't have a corridor, it's really tricky to go through an existing area. So that's why, to Ari's point, bus rapid transit running down the street, the centers of streets is a really good approach. Utilizing and sharing existing rail corridor, sometimes with freight rail, is a productive approach to look at as well. But it's not easy.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll add to that too. You got a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem sometimes with transit, where you need the density to get the ridership to get the funding, but you need the rail to get the developer to be willing to build the density. And so it's a little tricky.
Thank you.
Director Stalley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Your hospitality in Utah was just absolutely over the top, and we're so impressed by what we learned. We did start our blueprint with learning from Robert Groh and Envision Utah, and it was so inspiring to see that Envision Utah has maintained its energy in the succeeding years and allowed a great partnership to continue. We didn't do that here. We worked hard with Valley Vision to reach out to many, many people, but we kind of let that go once the plan was adopted, and I think it was to our detriment. My question is, how has Envision Utah continued to sustain itself in these subsequent years, particularly in terms of financing?
Sorry, I know that's your question to answer, but I'll just say partnership is key. And with that, I'm just gonna have to apologize. I have to drop off. It's wonderful to see you all again. And James, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, as Andrew said, partnership is key. So partnering with WFRC, but particularly I think with the private sector. I think we have an advantage in being a nonprofit that, since we're not government, it's, we bring the private sector and the public sector together. And a lot of our funding comes out of that private sector, and they outlast election cycles. And so we've had a few of our local foundations who've just been consistent funders over the years. And I think it's, as you point out, it's really critical to just keep up that public engagement, because memories are short and elected officials change and so forth.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take the last question of the day in order to be sensitive about everybody's time. Director Farage.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Actually, this was a question for Ari, so thank you for your presentation. Obviously, we're all very impressed with what the Wasatch Front's doing. I think the question that I have, you had it in one of your earlier slides about sort of some of the challenges that you were looking at in the mid-90s, and then in some of the other slides around sort of, some of the indicators increased, better air quality, but obviously, decreased usage of water per person per gallon per day, that type of thing. Every major headline over the course of the past year or so has had stories about the Great Salt Lake and the Wasatch Front running out of water and losing its water supply. What are you all doing with regard? You've got a huge amount of growth. How are you solving for that situation? Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, personally, I think you've hit on what to me is the biggest challenge in Utah. And I think it's going to be water going forward, just because you combine the growth with climate change, and it's going to be a really, really big challenge. We are taking a lot of steps to try to deal with it. Probably not enough yet. So this last legislative session, for example, I think $50 million was set aside for buying water rights for the Great Salt Lake and wetland restoration projects and so forth. And there were legal changes to allow farmers, for example, to fallow their fields and lease out the water rights for wildlife and in-stream flows and things like that. So we're taking a lot of steps. We're also now, there are a lot of conservation things that are happening, money for people to take out their park strips, for example, and replace them with different landscaping and so forth. I think there's still a lot more that's going to have to be done, though. So,
great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, we thank you, Ari, and please tell Andrew the same thing. We thank you. Everybody give him a round of applause, please. And
thanks, everybody.
We can't wait to see you in Sacramento.
Yeah, and I apologize for not being there when you came to visit. You guys were headed east, and I was headed even farther east. I was in Washington, D.C. while you were in Salt Lake. So.
Oh, DC is my hometown, so sometimes I'd rather be there myself. Thanks a lot, Ari.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Mr. Chair, if I'm not doing my report yet, but just to put the finer point in the closing on that workshop. So as I sort of opened on this, the story of Salt Lake and Utah and what they've done there, it reminds me, actually, going back to the beginning of our, I think I mentioned the regional progress report. At the beginning of this year, though, I think your first workshop for the year was Rick Cole, who came and talked to you about growth and development, being a city manager and a mayor. And the thing I remember taking away from that is you have to ask and demand for the best, because you're going to have all kinds of, proposals and things come to you, and you could sort of settle. But we have to be intentional. We have to be intentional as a region. We wanted you to ride bus rapid transit in Utah because we don't have any here. And to that first project or that first multifamily or high density infill project is hard, right? The easier thing to do is to actually have low density development, not invest intentionally in our transportation, not ask network and things like BRT and light rail, and not ask for the higher piece. And I think this, as we get into the blueprint and we extend our schedule, as we've been talking about, to give us some time next year to have a regional conversation. Director Stollard, it was you and I on the bus when we were talking about the blueprint in Valley Vision 20 years ago. So many people are no longer here from that blueprint, and I think folks have forgotten. And that's okay, that's understandable. But maybe it is time to make a sort of a new commitment regionally, right? Anyway, all of these things that I said, I think are going to be very relevant for the conversations we're going to be having next year about the region's future here in the Sacramento region.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. So we have made it through our agenda. And the last
Chair Jennings, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We had we've had 2 public comments come in. One is a written. Would you like me to read it into the record?
Please.
Okay, and then there's also a gentleman who is online who would like to speak as well.
And
Are
he's
you
been
okay
very
with that?
patient, so we will allow that to happen.
Okay, we'll have him speak first. Hi, Jonathan. If you can hear me, this is the clerk to the board of SACOG, and we're ready to take your statement.
Great. So I just would like to put this on everybody's, agenda. So there is a huge problem going on with animal control in Elk Grove, California, in Elk Grove. The problem that we have are that the citations that are written for animal control are defective, and they're causing dogs to be euthanized unjustly. Now, I don't know how all the cities in Sacramento, work through their citations and come up with the language that they use in their code. but the Elk Grove Code is defective and the procedures they use are defective. And right now, there is a 16-month-old German Shepherd that's about to be euthanized based on these defective procedures. So I would just like this body to kind of take a view at their own animal control guidelines, their own animal control citations, and kind of look at them and see if they reflect what they're actually trying to accomplish. So far in Elk Grove, in 24 months, there's been 80 dogs put to death due to these citations. A Chihuahua, a Shih Tzu, all kinds of small breeds were put down because of these overarching laws that have been put in place in 2008. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention and try to, we're trying to work with the city of Elk Grove, but they refuse to comment. They refuse to kind of see what is happening here. So we're taking every outlet that we can to try to get justice for not only our dog and our family, but the many others that have reached out in the last 2 weeks with the same problems.
Jonathan, as a city council member of another city, I encourage you to get in front of the city council and speak under items not on the agenda. I'm sure you've already done that.
We have.
I also know that you've probably put your concerns in writing to the council members so that they can see your concerns and they can address what can be done about it. You have a council member here on SACOG board, Darren Soon, who's heard your concerns, and I'm sure that he will be reaching out to you, or you should be reaching out to him.
Well,
So,
I think he's probably going to respond to the 6 lawsuits that are currently already been filed against Elk Grove, including 2 federal suits regarding these statutes, regarding this Elk Grove code. So I'm sure that he can't publicly comment. But I just wanted every other city in this area to be really sure when they look at their animal control code that it makes sense, because a lot of these dogs are getting killed in the dark, and that's just the truth.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks
Thank
for calling
you.
in. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Chair Jennings, there's a written statement from a separate commenter.
Okay.
Shall I read that?
Please.
Okay. It's from Kyle Jager. Dear SACOG Board of Directors, please consider a review of Elk Grove's ongoing efforts to euthanize a 1-year-old dog, Zeus, whose situation has been widely covered in the Sacramento Bee and by national press. The city's initial plan to euthanize the dog was stayed by a federal court last month. The circumstances surrounding its actions have also resulted in a federal lawsuit filed against Elk Grove Police Officer Crystal Mosek on Wednesday. The city council has repeatedly been pressed on the case at recent meetings, but requests for information have been met with silence and stonewalling. And then they link to the article. That concludes the public comment.
Great, great. So we will go back to our reports. Are there any board members that have reports they'd like to present at this time?
All the city council members, all of the cities.
Hearing none, seeing no hands go up. James, would you like to give your report at this time?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Just a few things that I provided in my written update. On November 3rd, Thursday, November 3rd, between your committees, really an extension of the Transportation Committee, we've done these occasional lunches. We're delighted to be bringing back the Capitol Corridor, JPA, the Passenger Rail Authority, bringing rail service here to Sacramento, but soon to hopefully Roseville and Auburn, and also Dan Levitt from San Joaquin Rail Commission and ACE Rail, who is working on the project to bring ACE and San Joaquin's up to Sacramento, Elk Grove, Sacramento, North Sacramento, Airport, Plumas Lake, Marysville, and Chico. So they'll be actually giving presentations at that lunchtime session. You all are welcome. Stay late from transportation, come early for land use, come and join us any other way you can, because we are, as an agency now, taking the chair role again for the Mega Region Working Group next year, and there has never been more passenger rail funding available at the state level and the federal level. So it's a nice setup really to next year. I think you all got that email. I hope you don't mind that we're giving you some data now on how many high school students have applied for the Youth Leadership Academy. Congratulations to all of you with those big numbers. If you don't have big numbers, we're happy to help you. Obviously, Rosie Ramos is our lead on that, but we are looking for a great incoming class for our Youth Leadership Academy. That's they're diverse in every way, race, ethnicity, income, but also geography. So help us get those numbers up. It's open until November 4th. And then just in terms of reminder of your calendar, committee meetings again, early November, board Thursday, November 10th. That's a week earlier than usual because of the CSAC meeting. There are no December committee meetings, just a special board meeting Thursday, December 1st at 9:30 a.m. So special board meeting, last of the year. And as I had said earlier, we'd love to see you in person. So put it on your calendars, come down to Sacramento. It'll be a nice review of the year, and we'll begin to honor some of our outgoing retiring board members for their service. So thank you very much.
And I hope all of us will come to honor those who have served. That special board meeting on the 1st of December, correct? Is one that I would encourage all of us to come to and really pay tribute to those who are no longer going to be on this board or who have served on this board. Our next meeting, has been said already, is Thursday, November the 10th at 9:30, our next board meeting. So if you have any other dates on your calendar, delete those and add that date and time to the calendar so that you know this is the place we want you. And we want all of you. Like, we got a good number today. We got a great number today, but we want everybody. Come on back and let's get a chance to fellowship at a board meeting, have another great board meeting like we did today. With that, nothing else, Lynette? Nothing else, Jim? Nothing else, Eric? Casey? Mike? We good? That's it. This is adjourned. Thank you.